This channel is called Becoming a Bookworm, and one of the most important things I wanted to achieve with it was to read consistently. So basically I went from reading 1 book a year for my previous life to reading 82 books last year. And in this video I wanted to give you tips on how you could also read more. Or read at all. So how could you read more books? Well, the first thing is to pick the right book. I know this may seem obvious to some, but to me it really wasn't. I used to think that I had a problem with my concentration, and I still may have a problem with my concentration, but if I choose the right books, I do not have that issue anymore. You may say that I realized that I was not the problem, and in fact in my last video I talked about classics and what classics to start with. Every time I've thought about starting to read before, I've thought that I should start with the classics. That's a silly thought because those books weren't really made for me at all. Many of them are enjoyable, but to people starting out reading, I don't think I would recommend classics to anyone. They often have a difficult language, they're set in time that you won't see yourself in, I guess. There's too much stuff. So I would recommend starting with other books than those. Basically, just pick up a book you think you will enjoy, and if you do not enjoy it, just leave it. That's basically tip number 2, just leave it. If you don't enjoy a book, stop reading it and find another one. There's always another one. And that leads us over to tip number 3, which is when you've found the book that you want to be reading, just carry it with you everywhere. I think you might be surprised of how many small moments during the course of the day that you actually get some time to read a couple of pages. At least I was very surprised with my own reading. One behavior I changed when I started reading was picking up the book when I waited for the bus instead of my phone. In my head I sort of thought of that time as so small that I couldn't really get any reading time in, but often the bus is delayed, and when you first pick up the book outside of the bus, you probably read on the bus as well, so that time combined is really great reading time. It really felt inspiring starting the bus ride at one page and ending it at another one. It sort of felt like I didn't waste my time, as I many times felt like when I spent the bus ride on my phone, so I hope that tip helps for you as well. But not everyone carries a beautiful backpack like me, and that brings us over to my next point, and that is read in the format that you'd like. So whether that is reading on a Kindle, reading the actual physical copy, or bringing your headphones with you and listening to an audiobook. Or you can even read on your phone, so there are many options. And of course the phone you probably have with you either way. Sometimes I get comments from format purists here on this channel, and they seem to think that the only thing you can actually read is hardbacks, and that's silly, just ignore these. That being said, I do actually prefer my physical copies, but that's probably because I'm 95 years old in my head, and you do whatever you like to do. I do also like to have them in my shelves, so the most sane thing would be to go to the library and just borrow them, but that's not happening anytime soon. So even though I like my physical copies best, I find myself listening to audiobooks about 50% of the time, and that's just because of my schedule. Sometimes I'm out driving and sometimes I'm doing laundry, and you might say it's a bit more sensible to listen to audiobooks in those cases. But I do feel there's a lot to be said about different formats of reading, but I think that'll be another video. The next thing I thought I'd speak about is actually picking up a book, or forcing yourself to pick up a book, because it's really hard sometimes to start a new book. You have to get to know new people, new places, new moods. It can be a bit, let's just say you have to focus a bit maybe. And this is why it's just important to start. And starting something is the hardest part, so that's why you have to sort of remember that you'll have to start. This point can actually make me quite frustrated sometimes. That's often because I try to start a new book at the wrong time of day. So we all have our ups and downs energy-wise in the course of the day, and for me the mornings are the best. This is when I'm the most focused and concentrated, so if I am going to start a new book, I should start it in the morning so I'm focused on the first pages, because those are the most important ones. And sometimes this leads to a bit of frustration because I haven't really caught the different characters and I'm not really on track with the book. But you can learn from my mistakes that I repeat every week. So start a book when you feel most energized to reading it. And one thing that's relevant for most things in life is that you tell yourself that you're going to read for 10 minutes, and after those 10 minutes have passed, you can just quit reading. This allows you to get into the novel, and probably you will read for more than 10 minutes, because that's how it works. And it's a great tip, I find. The most important thing is that you don't go a whole lot of days without reading. But that being said, it's also normal to get into reading ruts where you're not in the mood to read that much, but you sort of have to read something before you can get into a reading rut. If you have advice for someone that wants to start reading or reading more, please comment them below. And now over to one of those things that I thought was total nonsense, but it turned out to be really great advice, and that is read several books at the same time. This seemed kinda counterintuitive to me in the beginning, because what were the chances that I was supposed to focus on more than one book when I was struggling with that one? This turned out to be great advice for me because I'm not always in the mood to read the same novel 2 days in a row, and then having several options lets me choose the mood I'm in, and then the progression will feel great. Also, one side effect of this is that you might finish like 3 books on the same day or in the course of 2 days. And as a person that starts out reading, just updating your Goodreads or Storygraph with 3 titles in the course of the day feels very good. I found this advice especially meaningful when it comes to nonfiction. Those books can often be heavy and slow, and you feel like you've spent a whole lot of time with just a few pages or a short nonfiction book. And then having something light, something TikTok booky to read on the side is a great way of feeling that you're racing again, feeling that you're turning the pages at your normal speed again. That helps my mood at least. And my next recommendation you already know, because that's watch booktube videos. And this is sort of what got me engaged in reading again. I just enjoy watching people talk about books they love so much. And before I actually opened my first pages, I could watch hours upon hours of booktube videos just to see what people thought of different novels and to get the recommendations. I find it easier to get recommendations from booktubers that you know, or at least you know their preferences when it comes to books, and that leads you more in the right direction than to read a review of a novel in a newspaper, I find. Before I started this channel, booktube was by far the place where I got most of my book recommendations, and probably the books I got from booktube was better rated in my mind than the books I thought I'd pick out for myself. So there's that. And all of these things sort of leads me over to this point, and that is buy books. And this is not like just go into the bookstore and buy a book. It's more about thinking about going to the bookstore, walking into the bookstore, talking to the people in the bookstore, smelling the books at the bookstore, and thinking about all the books you want to read in the bookstore. There's so much positives to say about the bookstore. And basically, in the darker periods of my life where I didn't read books, I even then bought books because it's just a great feeling. And thinking about becoming a reader is also something I truly enjoy. So now when I walk into a bookstore and buy books that I know I'll actually be reading, that just takes it to another level. And I know that people have different preferences. Some likes to read a physical copy they bought themselves, some likes to go to the library, some likes the Kindle, some likes the audiobooks. It doesn't matter as long as you read books that you want to be reading. So these were my tips to how you can start reading or reading more. I do hope you got something out of it. If you did, please leave a comment, and I hope you have a pleasant day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!